I am a dark web bounty hunter, and I was hired to take out my brother. There is a reason why so many people go missing each year and are never heard of again. Despite the resources of entire communities and in some cases even governments, people still have the tendency to vanish without a trace. Regardless of what happens to the person, or what kind of behind-the-scenes crimes they commit, the news is all the same. Family man this or charity giver that. I will tell you up front, most of the people who go missing deserve to go missing. And I can speak confidently about this because I'm one of the reasons so many people have gone missing. I am what you call a BHK, which stands for Bounty Hunter Killer. There is a whole community of us that operate on the dark side of the internet. The reason I have the K at the end of my title is because some of the best trackers and hunters don't have the morals to kill the people they find. This has never been a problem for me, and I am quite glad that my conscience can take it. The people who are willing to execute the target get paid significantly more than the ones who plant blackmailable evidence or set up the target for extortion. Though I have numerous stories of my killings, which perhaps one day I will share with you, I am here to talk about the recent one. This happened last winter when I got contacted by my manager. For the sake of anonymity, let's just call him Chuck. Chuck is a certified tech whiz who handles all the details and transactions with my payments. I was skeptical about letting someone in who knows about me and what I do, but in time I realized it is the smarter move to have a tech guy on your team. Especially when dealing with the dark web and murder. He calls me under my code name, Vile. We got a child or /unaliver. Wichita, Kansas. Track him down, get the location of the bodies, waste him, $20,000. Attached to his message was some pictures of a torture setup in the body of a woman whose age I am not going to try and guess. Some serial unalivers really think posting their photos to the dark web is safe. This particular photo had a white male hand and several identifiable items in the background. It appears someone related to one of the victims had been searching that part of the internet in suspicion that she might show up there. Like I said, no one just goes missing. This case would be pretty straightforward. Chuck would analyze the criminal records of white men in Wichita as well as get the details on the items showing up in the tortured girl's photo. Raid bug spray, a tackle box of lures, in particular largemouth bass, and a few disposable vapes. Let's just say that Chuck enjoys the hunt as much as I do, just in a different way. 2017 red Hyundai Sonata going in and out of several of the shops. White guy too. License plate is unreadable from the cameras. I can give you all the roads where I lose him. Luckily he passes tobacco and gifts every time he has movement. I think I can narrow you down to a few neighborhoods. Good luck. Any mentioned details on how the child unaliver meets his demise? I asked him. Make him suffer. This is how the conversation ended with me and Chuck. It was at this point that I headed down to my garage where all of my gear is located. It would be a bit of a drive to get to Kansas, so I would get ready early. In my garage I have a blacked out 2014 SRT Charger, all white with tinted windows. This job was going to be creative though. I went to the back room of my garage and loaded up all the cages I would be needing. After getting everything aligned I called it a night and got ready for next morning's drive. Upon arriving at Tobacco and Gifts, I wasn't forced to play the waiting game long. I saw the red Sonata fairly early and copied down the license plate. It looked like he was heading back to the house or apartment where he lived. After getting the details to Chuck I was set. Guy's name is Marvin. No criminal record, lives alone. Google Earth shows that his driveway wraps around to a back basement entrance. Interesting, I thought. I knew someone named Marvin. He was an old coworker that I knew before I was a bounty hunter in my hometown. After parking in the street, I only had to wait 6 hours until Marvin took a hike and left. This gave me plenty of time to pull my car around back, break into the back door which did in fact lead to a basement, and unpack my things before returning to my car and moving it out of sight. Once that was all done it was going to be the waiting game. I was able to get familiar with the surrounding of Marvin's basement and torture chamber. Except this time, it would be him. There was a strong smell of musty cigar smoke. The rest of the room consisted of trash except one thing. There was a blood-stained table bolted to the floor with chains. This was the place where the woman's photos ended up on the dark web and met her fate. I'll tell you this. Marvin was a horrible person, and he deserved to be taken out. After everything I had heard about him, I already knew what type of person he was. Maybe a little too well. We locked eyes, and it hit me. This face was eerily familiar, but it wasn't my coworker that I used to know. His hair was similar to mine, and he displayed attributes like his head and nose shape that were similar to mine. I knew who this was. It was my brother. Malcolm? Chuck had somehow taken his alias of Marvin as his real name. He didn't know it was me since my face was covered. Please. Please don't hurt me. I don't know what I did. Who are you? Please, don't hurt me. Just please. I decided to take advantage of my anonymity, as he still didn't know it was me. I am not going to hurt you. I know what you did and no police will get involved if you do what I say. I need you on the table and chained so you don't try anything. No, I promise I won't hurt you. This wasn't entirely a lie. I wasn't going to be the one to hurt him. I couldn't. It was my brother. The one that taught me how to play hide and seek when I was 5. But why was he in Kansas? He told my family that he moved to California for a new job. I was shocked. He lied to us. He lied about everything. He was living a double life. Although I was shaken up, I had to keep my cool. After all, this was my job, and one false move, and it could be over for me and the entire bounty hunting industry. I went down into the basement and found a place for Malcolm. It was an eerie place, with dried blood on the floor, countless dusty boxes and books, and a curtain of some project in the corner. Malcolm was thoroughly chained up. I opened up my duffel bag and tied 4 tunicates around each of his limbs. Next I opened up the tripod and Bahana to record. Lastly, I went to the cages in the corner that had my bomber jacket over them and brought them over to the table. 4 cages total. I began to do my typical ritual of torture on these victims. He was my brother, but I couldn't sacrifice my identity to him. In the first cage is the infamous Arizona bark scorpion. I got it as a pet from an ex-girlfriend who ironically knew I loved researching arachnids. In the second cage is my Brazilian wandering spider. This one was actually tough to get, but I had a connection in Colombia I met from the deep web who dealt with exotic animals. In the third cage, the most boring in my opinion, is my pet rattlesnake. Eastern diamondback to be more specific. And in the fourth cage is the non-lethal giant desert centipede. I will be honest with you, the thing scares the hell out of me. Malcolm at this point gets the gist of what is about to happen. He can't scream or cry because of the gag in his mouth, but the eyes say enough. I double-check the camera, make sure the tunicates are nice and tight, then begin. I put on Rapika gloves and grab Sally first. I bring her over to old Marvin's right foot and get her all riled up. When she starts getting snappy, I let her sink her fangs into Marvin's Achilles tendon. I should mention that his feet and hands are white from lack of blood at this point, but his reaction says it all. I let Sally get a few more bites into his foot before I return her to her cage. Bark scorpion time. This one is simple because you just need to hold it by the stinger and stick it where you want. This one goes right into the whiteness of the bottom of his foot. Spider time. As I carefully pick up the wandering spider, it bites my gloved hand a few times. This is a bit of a bummer because I want her to save all of her venom for Marvin's right wrist. Either way, she gets a good few bites and that I think did the job. Lastly, we have a centipede. Now I have to admit, I wasn't going to be picking the thing up if I didn't have to. Marvin at this point was almost passed out, so before bringing him back to full consciousness I untied his hand and stuck it into the centipede's terrarium. After viciously attacking the hand, Marvin got all antsy and started fighting with me. It did him no good. But at the same time, it did me no good either. Technically, I had just unalived my brother. But just before I was about to close the basement door behind me, a strange hunch made me turn back towards him. Something wasn't sitting right with me. I realized that I didn't even consider double-checking with Chuck. I pulled out my phone, deciding to call Chuck, to make sure we had the right guy. Chuck, confirm it. Was the target's real name Marvin? I demanded, my eyes never leaving my brother. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Wait a moment, Vile. Let me pull up the profile, Chuck responded. A moment of silence followed, only broken by the faint clattering of a keyboard. A dreadful realization crept into my mind. I thought back to all the victims, the photos, the patterns. It didn't quite match Malcolm. He was into fishing, cigars, but he was no serial killer. The victims were always found with some kind of a strange symbol on their bodies, a personal signature left by the killer. But in Malcolm's basement, I found no sign of the symbol. Nothing in his basement suggested he was the one who carved that symbol onto the victims. Suddenly, Chuck broke the silence. Shoot, Vile, there's been a mistake. The name isn't Marvin. It's Morgan. Morgan Levitt, Wichita, Kansas. My blood ran cold. I'm sorry, Vile, there was an error in the data collection, Chuck stammered, fear evident in his voice. I disconnected the call, my breath hitched. I turned back towards Malcolm, lying helpless, now unconscious due to the venomous bites. But if Malcolm wasn't the killer? An ear-splitting noise echoed through the room. It came from a distant corner, where I had noticed a large, heavy curtain earlier. Something was behind it. In my haste to get Malcolm tied up, I hadn't bothered to look behind the curtain. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached it. I pulled back the curtain, revealing a hidden door. Cautiously, I turned the knob and pushed it open. Inside was a dimly lit room, filled with an array of photographs and diagrams pinned on the wall. The same symbol that was carved onto the victims, it was everywhere. A chill ran down my spine as I looked closer at the photographs. They were of me. Not just recent ones, but pictures dating back to my childhood, my old house, my friends, my family, even my brother. Every aspect of my life was documented meticulously. Then I noticed the corkboard. It was plastered with news clippings and photographs of each victim I have taken out. The photos, the symbols, they all added up now. Each victim had a striking resemblance to me. This wasn't about them, this was about me. A realization hit me hard. My brother Malcolm wasn't the killer, but the one he'd been framed to be. The real killer wasn't just some random psychopath, he had been hunting me. And just like that, a chilling laughter echoed through the room. I turned around, and there he stood. A man, slender and pale, standing at the doorway, his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. I've been waiting for you, Vile, he sneered, the door slowly closing behind him, leaving us in darkness.